Hey everyone, this is Ms. Fisher, and this is a video to help you with Repl.it Lab 710, Keep Composites Only. So whenever you open up the lab, just make sure that you read the document, the README document first. So in this case, we are going to complete the implementation of two methods, getFactorList that receives an integer parameter, and it's going to return an array list that contains all of the numbers factors. And then we're going to implement the keep only composite numbers. It's going to accept a list, and then it's going to return a new list, and the new list is going to include only the composite numbers from the original. However, it is important to not modify the contents of the original list. You're going to have to return a new list. You have to instantiate a new list and return it. And notice that you must call on getFactorList within the keep only composite numbers method, okay? And we talked about in class that composite numbers must have at least 3 factors, including 1 and the number itself. And prime numbers have exactly 2 factors. That's the definition of a prime number. Therefore, the number 1 is considered neither prime nor composite. But in our case, what's important is that 1 is not composite, because composite numbers have to have at least 3 factors. So if you take a look at the 2 methods here, we're going to implement getFactorList, which accepts a number and returns a new array list. Okay, so we've got some test cases here for 1, 9, 23, 50, 100, and 762. I think we did this in class, but I can go ahead and go over it again. The first thing we need to do is we're going to return an array list. And so we actually have to create an array list, which is going to accept integers only. And I can call this factors. And let's go ahead and actually instantiate a new array list, and it will be empty. Then let's go ahead and start adding the factors of the number here. Okay, and whether the number be 1, we're going to assume the precondition is that the number is going to be a positive integer. Okay, so let's think about the number 10. We know that the factors of 10 are going to be 1, 2, 5, and 10. So we know that for any positive integer, 1 is going to be a factor, and the number itself is going to be a factor. And then there may be some factors in between. So I'm going to begin with I gets 1, I less than or equal to the number itself, and that's going to depend on the parameter, and then I plus plus. Okay, and then I have to check if I is actually a factor. How do I do that? Well, I know that if I take the number and I divide by I, and there's no remainder, so I mod I equals 0, then it is a factor. So I'm going to go ahead and add it to my factors list. Okay, and then you have to make sure you actually return factors. So let's go ahead and run the program. And we should see that if you take a look at 1, 9, 23, 50, 100, 70, 62, it does look like it's got the factors. And you can check. I forgot to put the expected results at the bottom, but if you run the tests, and it will check for you and let you know what is the expected results. So the actual results are here. The expected results are at the top. And you can see we did the first part correct. And notice that this is not correct because we actually haven't finished it. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the next part. So keep only composite numbers. You're going to accept a list. And remember that an array list is a list. So in our class, this is going to accept an array list. And it's going to return an array list, which will only include the composite numbers from this num list, which is the original list. So let's think about how we can do this. Okay, so we already talked about how if we had a composite number like 10, the factor list would include 4 factors. Here, if we have 9, it would include 3 factors. Oops. Now, 1 only has 1 factor, and 11, which is prime, has 2 factors. So how can we use get factory list in order to help us with the with our keep only composite numbers? Well, we know that here is our list 1, and our list 1 is going to be the list that we accept in our keep only composite numbers. Okay, that's our num list. Okay, and num list is going to accept the actual parameter. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to num list. Okay, just to make it so that it's consistent with the formal parameter name. So num list is not going to change, but we are going to return a new list that's only going to keep the composite numbers. So how are we going to do this? Well, we know that we're going to iterate through each of these numbers in num list, and we're going to call on get factory list. So if I call on get factory list of 1, I notice that the list only has 1 item. So I'm going to go ahead and think about calling. I need to call get factor list and then check the size of the list, right? And notice that the size of the list, there's only 1 element, so I'm not going to include it in my new list here. Okay, so I'm going to keep it empty. So we check this one, right? So what we're going to do next is we're going to check off this 2. So 2, if we put 2 in our get factory list, right? If I put in 2 here, what would I get? Well, I would only get 2 factors. And again, that is less than 3, so I'm not going to put 2 in our new list. What about 6? Well, 6 has 4 factors, right? We've got 1, 2, 3, and 6. Well, that's, greater than 2, so I'm going to go ahead and put 6 in our list. What about 9? Well, 9, I can add it right here, has 3 numbers in the list. 9, okay? And let me put these in order in the way they are in our list. There we go. And 9 has more than 2, or greater than or equal to 3. So I'm going to go ahead and put 9 in our list. What about 13? Well, if I call on get factor list 13, then I'm only going to get 2 numbers in our list, just 1 and 13. So that is not greater than 2. 2 is not greater than 2, or it's not greater than or equal to 3. I'm not going to put 13 in there. And then the last one is 15. Well, 15 definitely has more than 2 factors. It's got 3, 5, 15. I'm going to check the size of the list, and then I am going to put 15. So in the new list, which I began with an empty list, I'm going to only insert elements from num list, right, as I traverse this list. When I call on get factory list, right, I will check the size, and if it's greater than 2 or greater than or equal to 3, I'll go ahead and put it in the new list. Okay, and then let me put num list here. So when I return num list, it's going to stay the same if I print it, but the new list is going to have only the composite numbers. Okay, so this is what we're going to do here. I'll just help y'all get started. The first thing, again, as we said, is we're going to return a new list, and so we're going to go ahead and just take this bit of code. I'm going to copy and paste it here, but I'm going to call it ret list. This is the list I'm going to return. And I'm going to go ahead and return it at the end, just so I don't forget. So now we got to figure out what to do with this return list. So as we said, we're going to iterate through num list, okay, 4. And I'm not going to do anything. I don't need the index numbers, right? So I can actually just use a for each loop. And so I can have it be unboxed to an int. And so for int num in num list, okay, I'm going to go ahead and call on get factory list. And so you can create a local variable, or you can just call on it and then call on the size. I want to go ahead and create a local variable just so that it may be a little easier to think about. So we're going to have the factors get factor list, and then of num, right? And num is basically, if you take a look at this list right here, okay, and I'll put it down here. Num is each number in this list, okay? So we are here, and I'm going to go ahead and put, this is our num list here. So the first num is going to be 1. So what is factors going to do? It is going to basically store the factor list of num, right? Which in this case is 1. Okay. So once I do that, I need to check its size. So factors dot size, and then you're going to fill out the conditional statement here. And then if it's, as we said, greater than 2 or greater than or equal to 3, you're going to go ahead and add it to this ret list. Okay. And add.retlist.add, and then you're going to, in this case, since we're using a for each loop, the local variable is called num. And that's really it. And so what we'll do is we'll go ahead and run the tests. So we're going to run. And it looks like we passed. If you look at the results, you can see the actual output and the expected output. If you run the program, you will see the first test, which we know already passed with the factors from each of the numbers. And then in the return list with composites only, we've got only the composite numbers, and these are the numbers where the factor list was 3 or more or greater than 2. And then the return list here again. It's in the order. We traversed it from beginning to end. Okay? All right, so I hope that helped, and I will see you in class. Okay, bye everyone.